The Hurrier model in listening, close interpersonal relationships. Relationships are built with trust and openness. This trust leads to self-disclosure, which allows two people to share their feelings and intentions, which allows them to grow closer together. The Hurrier model defines a framework for apprehensive listening, therefore defining effective listening. This effective listening is extremely important in relationships. It allows two people to grow closer, understand each other, and when this communication is lacking, it leads two people to often argue and have issues in said relationships. The Hurrier model was developed by Judy Brownwell and is shown in the textbook Listening Processes, Functions, and Competency. This shows the connection between communication and maintaining good relationships. This is because if communication is lacking, then the relationship will often begin to have problems because the two people are unable to connect, communicate, and understand each other. Communication is built through listening. Without listening, communication cannot happen. Listening is the first step that allows communication to occur. And as stated, the relationships begin to grow weaker when this communication is lacking. The Hurrier model is defined into 6 steps. The first step being hearing what's said. If you don't hear what's being said, none of the other steps can exist. Step number 2 is understanding what's being said and then remembering it in step 3. You might need to remember it for you'll need to remember it for the conversation and maybe different contexts where the issue comes up again. Step number 4 is interpreting. This is where you decide how you feel about the message. Maybe it's something that's offensive or something you're passionate about. All of these factors will allow you to evaluate your feelings and the message, allowing you to respond in an effective way for the conversation. Poor listening often leads to an issue in relationships. If any of the steps of the Hurrier model are not there, listening will not occur. For example, if you're skipping the evaluating step, you will have heard the message, understood it, you remember what's being said, and you know how you feel about the message. But you're unable to evaluate how you need to respond and how you need to convey your feelings based off the message. This causes there to be an issue in the relationship and communication. In the book Winning Hearts and Minds, Transactional Analysis Simplified by Indrani Mitra, she says, and I quote, "Communication between two people is a transaction. Any behavior intended to send a message to another person qualifies as half a transaction." Meaning, if you're skipping any of the steps in the Hurrier model and unable to become a part of this listening transaction, communication cannot occur because half of the transaction is being skipped. Listening and maintaining relationships. Listening is extremely important in maintaining relationships. The first step of fixing a relationship or an issue in a relationship is by sitting down and listening. By listening, you are understanding what the issue is and coming up with ways to fix it. This allows for good communication and problem resolving in relationships. In the article, Creating Powerful Personal and Professional Relationships Through Effective Communication by Borden and McLaughlin, they say, the relational aspect of communication are actually the most difficult, yet are increasingly more important. Meaning that it can be hard to communicate in relationships, especially when there's a lot of feelings and emotions. You often find that you have your own opinions, and it's hard to put those aside and communicate. Say you often have an issue in a friendship, and you and a friend are continuously bickering. You have feelings and thoughts about why they're bickering. This upsets you. Therefore, it makes it hard for you to put this aside and listen to their own perspective. But it is increasingly more important because once you've done this, it becomes easier to begin to fix the relationship. Communication is the heart of building and maintaining relationships. Communication starts with good listening. If you're unable to listen to what's being said, you'll be unable to connect what it means, therefore unable to communicate. Especially when there's an issue in a relationship, it is important to listen to what the problem is with the other person in order to communicate your feelings based off that, and then finally listen to a solution that may be able to help the relationship. Therefore, this makes effective listening, as defined through the Hurrier model, increasingly more important in maintaining relationships, if not the most important aspect of it. And these are all my sources.